6 months had passed since Dr. Elaine Warren and her small team discovered the strange artifacts on planet GC3721. The quiet research site had transformed into a bustling compound with dozens of temporary structures housing over 100 specialists from across the galaxy. Large excavation machines hummed in the distance, carefully removing layers of soil under the watchful eyes of research teams. The Galactic Council had wasted no time in escalating the mission after receiving Elaine's initial report. Commander. Jack Nelson stepped out of the shuttle that had just landed at the edge of the base camp. He was tall with broad shoulders and short gray hair that hinted at his 50 years of age. His uniform bore the insignia of the Council's Special Investigations Division, a department rarely involved in archaeological matters. He squinted in the bright sunlight and surveyed the busy scene before him. A woman approached him, her red hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Commander Nelson, I'm Dr. Elaine Warren. Welcome to GC3721. Jack shook her hand firmly. Doctor, I've read all your reports. Impressive work. Elaine nodded, her expression guarded. She had not requested military oversight, but the Council had insisted on sending Jack to supervise the expanded operation. I'll show you what we've found since my last update, she said, leading him toward the main research facility. Inside the large prefabricated building, dozens of researchers worked at various stations, analyzing samples and studying digital scans. Elaine guided Jack to a secure room at the back where their most significant finds were kept. This is Dr. Susan Miller, Elaine said, introducing a woman with dark skin and intense eyes who was studying a holographic display of symbols. Our top linguistics expert. Susan looked up and nodded at Jack before returning to her work. Jack moved closer to see what had captured her attention so completely. The display showed the symbols from the original artifact Elaine had discovered, now compared with hundreds of other similar markings found on additional objects. Any progress on deciphering these? Jack asked. Susan sighed and pushed a button. That changed the display. Not exactly deciphering, but I've identified patterns. These symbols appear in consistent groupings. They're definitely some form of communication, not just decoration. Jack studied the display with interest. Like a language? Almost certainly, Susan replied. But it doesn't match anything in our database of known galactic languages, living or extinct. Elaine led Jack to another table where a collection of metal fragments was arranged in what appeared to be a partial reconstruction of a larger object. We believe this was some kind of electronic device, she explained. It contains what looks like primitive circuitry, though much of it has degraded beyond recognition. Jack picked up one of the fragments, turning it over in his hand. Any idea what it was used for? Not yet. But the technology level is puzzling. In some ways it seems advanced, in others quite primitive. It's inconsistent with any known civilization's development path. Jack set the fragment down carefully. And the dating? All consistent, Elaine confirmed. Everything we've found dates to between 12 and 15,000 years ago, no exceptions. Jack's expression remained neutral, but Elaine could tell he was troubled by this information. He moved to another display showing a map of the excavation site with colored markers indicating where various artifacts had been discovered. You found quite a lot in 6 months, he observed. And we've barely scratched the surface, Elaine replied. There's an entire complex buried about 20 meters down. We've only managed to access small portions of it so far. As they continued the tour, a young researcher burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. Dr. Warren! We've managed to extract data from the storage device. Elaine's eyes widened. Show me, she turned to Jack. 3 weeks ago? We found what appears to be a data storage unit. It was heavily damaged, but our tech team has been trying to recover anything from it. They followed the researcher to another section of the facility where a team of technicians huddled around a complex apparatus, connected to what looked like a small metallic cube. A woman in a lab coat looked up as they approached. We've recovered some corrupted files, she reported. Mostly fragmented, but there are images and what might be audio recordings. She tapped a control panel, and a holographic display flickered to life above the table. The image was blurry and distorted, but it clearly showed a figure, a humanoid figure. Jack leaned closer, his professional demeanor slipping for a moment. "Is that ... A human," Elaine confirmed quietly. "Or something that looks exactly like..." 1. The technician adjusted some controls and the image changed to show more figures, similarly human in appearance. Then it shifted to what appeared to be a structure, possibly the original form of the complex they were now excavating. Susan had joined them and was staring at the images with intense concentration. "Can you extract any text files? Anything with those symbols we've been studying?" The technician nodded and made more adjustments. The display changed again, showing lines of the mysterious symbols. Susan stepped forward eagerly, scanning the new data. After several minutes of silence, she turned to face the others, her expression a mixture of disbelief and excitement. "These symbols," she said slowly, "I've been comparing them to every known language in the galaxy, but I never thought to compare them to ancient Earth languages." Jack's eyebrows rose. "Earth languages? Why would you? Humans only achieved interstellar travel 3 centuries ago." "Exactly," Susan agreed. "But these symbols show remarkable similarities to several ancient Earth writing systems. Not identical, but the patterns of use, the structure. It's unmistakable." Elaine looked skeptical. "Are you suggesting humans were here 15,000 years ago? That's impossible. Human civilization was primitive then. Hunter-gatherers. Basic agriculture at best." Susan gestured to the recovered images. "I'm just following the evidence. These figures are clearly human or extremely human-like. The writing system has structural similarities to ancient Earth scripts, and now we have this." She pointed to another image that had appeared on the display. It showed what appeared to be a star map. Several points were marked with the same mysterious symbols. One point, near the edge of the map, was circled. Susan tapped the circled point. "Based on the configuration of the stars shown, I believe this is Earth." A heavy silence fell over the room. Jack finally broke it. "If you're right, this changes everything we know about human history, about galactic history." Elaine shook her head. "It's too soon to jump to conclusions. We need more evidence." "Then let's find it," Jack said decisively. "I'm authorizing a full-scale excavation of the entire complex. Whatever is buried here, we need to uncover it all." As the meeting broke up and the researchers returned to their work with renewed enthusiasm, Jack pulled Elaine aside. "The Council will want daily updates from now on. This discovery could have significant political implications." Elaine nodded, understanding the unspoken message. If humans had indeed achieved interstellar travel thousands of years before any other known species, humanity's status in the Galactic Council would be dramatically elevated. "We'll proceed carefully," she assured him. "Scientific accuracy is my only concern." Jack studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "Good, because one way or another, what we find here will change history." Outside, as the planet's sun began to set, the excavation machines continued their work, digging deeper into the past. Somewhere beneath the soil lay answers to questions no one had thought to ask before. Questions about humanity's forgotten journey to the stars. The research base on planet GC 3721 buzzed with activity as the morning sun rose over the excavation site. 3 months had passed since Commander Jack Nelson authorized the full-scale dig, and each day brought new discoveries that challenged everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about history. Inside the main research lab, Dr. Susan Miller hunched over her workstation, surrounded by holographic displays showing various symbols and translation attempts. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but she barely noticed her exhaustion. The recovered data from the storage device had occupied her every waking moment. She took a sip of her cold coffee and adjusted the display to show a new sequence of symbols. "Computer, run comparison analysis with Proto-Sumerian script," she instructed. The computer hummed as it processed her request. A moment later, a new display appeared showing a 62% correlation. Susan leaned back in her chair, a small smile forming on her tired face. This was the highest match yet. The door to the lab slid open, and Elaine entered carrying 2 fresh cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this," she said, placing one beside Susan and taking a seat next to her. "Any progress?" Susan nodded and gestured to the display. "I'm becoming more convinced these symbols represent an early form of human language. The structural patterns match several ancient Earth writing systems, particularly those from Mesopotamia and early East Asian civilizations, but they're not identical to any known script. It's like a common ancestor to all of them." Elaine frowned, still struggling with the implications. But that would mean humans achieved space travel, reached this planet, and then somehow forgot their own history. How is that possible? Before Susan could respond, Jack entered the lab, his face grim. "We have a visitor," he announced. "The Council has sent Zoltek to observe our progress." Susan and Elaine exchanged concerned glances. Zoltek was the Galactic Council's senior historian, a member of the ancient Relics species known for their long lives and meticulous attention to historical accuracy. His presence indicated just how seriously the Council was taking their discoveries. "When does he arrive?" Elaine asked. "He's already here," Jack replied. "His ship entered orbit an hour ago. He'll be at the base within the hour." The news sent the entire research team into a flurry of activity, preparing presentations and organizing their findings for the esteemed visitor. Zoltek arrived exactly on schedule, his tall, slender form draped in the formal robes of his office. His skin had the characteristic blue-gray tint of the Relics, and his 4 eyes blinked independently as he took in his surroundings. "Dr. Warren," he said, his voice surprisingly deep for his slight frame, "your discoveries have caused quite a stir in council chambers." Elaine bowed slightly, following the formal protocol for greeting a high-ranking council official. "We're honored by your presence, Historian Zoltek. We've prepared a complete briefing on our findings." Zoltek nodded, his upper eyes focusing on Elaine while his lower pair scanned the room. "I would prefer to see the evidence directly first before hearing your interpretations." The next several hours were spent showing Zoltek the excavation site and the artifacts they had recovered. He remained mostly silent, occasionally asking precise questions about dating methods or preservation techniques. His expression revealed nothing of his thoughts. Meanwhile, across the base, another team led by Paul Wright was working on a different section of the excavation. Paul was a structural engineer who specialized in ancient buildings. His team had been digging deeper into what appeared to be a large underground chamber. "Careful with that support beam," Paul called to one of the workers operating a small excavation drone. "We don't want to collapse." The drone delicately removed another layer of soil, revealing more of the metallic structure they had been uncovering for weeks. Suddenly, the drone's sensors began flashing. "I'm getting a hollow reading," the operator announced. "There's a space beyond this wall." Paul moved closer, examining the readings himself. "It's big, some kind of room or chamber." He activated his communicator. "Dr. Warren, Commander Nelson, this is Wright. We've found something you need to see." When Elaine, Jack, Susan, and Zoltek arrived at Paul's excavation site, the team had already created a small opening in the ancient wall. Paul handed Elaine a light probe. "I've only sent in scanning equipment so far. I thought you'd want to be the first to actually look inside." Elaine nodded her thanks and carefully extended the probe through the opening. The attached screen showed the interior of a large chamber, remarkably well preserved. Unlike the partial ruins they had been excavating, this room appeared almost intact, protected from the elements by its underground location. "It's some kind of control room," Elaine said, moving the probe to show consoles and what looked like workstations arranged in a circular pattern. "And there's something at the center." She focused the probe on a raised platform in the middle of the room where a large device stood. It resembled a projector of some kind, with a circular base and a complex apparatus pointing upward. "We need to get in there," Jack decided. "Right. How quickly can your team make a safe entrance?" "A few hours if we're careful," Paul replied. "The structure seems stable, but I want to reinforce the opening before anyone goes through. While Paul's team worked to create a safe entrance to the chamber, Susan continued analyzing the latest data recovered from the storage device. She had managed to partially restore some audio files, and now she played one for Elaine, Jack, and Zoltek. The sound was distorted and filled with static, but beneath the noise they could hear a voice. A human voice speaking words in an unfamiliar language. "I've run this through every analysis program we have," Susan explained. "The language structure is definitely related to early human languages from Earth. Some words are even recognizable as protoforms of existing Earth languages." Zoltek's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of intense interest among the Relics. "If your analysis is correct, Doctor, this would indicate humans achieved interstellar travel approximately 12 millennia before the Mendari, who were previously considered the first spacefaring species." His tone was neutral, but the implications of his statement hung in the air. By late afternoon, Paul's team had finished creating a reinforced entrance to the underground chamber. Elaine, Jack, Susan, and Zoltek prepared to enter, donning protective suits as a precaution against any potential contaminants. Paul led the way, his scanner checking for structural weaknesses as they moved forward. The chamber was larger than it had appeared on the probe screen. The air was stale but breathable, preserved in the sealed environment for thousands of years. Elaine moved carefully to the central platform where the mysterious device stood. "It looks like some kind of star projector," she said, examining it without touching. "Similar to what ancient planetariums on Earth used, but far more sophisticated." Susan had moved to one of the workstations along the wall. "These controls have the same symbols we've been studying," she reported. "And look at this." She pointed to what appeared to be a map etched into the console's surface. It showed a star system with several planets, one of which was clearly marked with a symbol. Jack leaned closer. "Is that ... Earth," Susan confirmed. "The symbol matches what we've identified as the designation for Earth in other artifacts, and these lines," she traced several paths extending from Earth to other points on the map, "appear to be travel routes." Zoltek had remained silent during their exploration, but now he approached the map, his 4 eyes studying it intently. "The implications are clear," he said finally. "If this evidence is verified, it would appear that humans achieved interstellar travel thousands of years before any other known species. The question that remains is what happened to this advanced civilization, and why did humanity appear to regress to a primitive state?" As they continued to explore the chamber, more evidence accumulated. They found what appeared to be living quarters, scientific equipment, and most significantly, a wall covered with images that told a story. The images showed human figures building ships, traveling among stars, establishing outposts on various worlds. But the final images depicted some kind of disaster, fires, destruction, and what looked like a deliberate burial or hiding of technology. "They didn't just disappear," Elaine said softly, studying the images. "They chose to erase their presence, but why?" No one had an answer, but as they stood in the silent chamber surrounded by the remnants of a forgotten human civilization, one thing became clear: history as they knew it was wrong. Humanity's journey to the stars had begun long before anyone had imagined, and the revelation would forever change the galaxy's understanding of its past. News of the discoveries on planet GC3721 spread quickly across the galaxy despite the Galactic Council's attempts to maintain secrecy. Within weeks, research teams were dispatched to dozens of other planets in neighboring star systems, seeking similar evidence of ancient human presence. Elaine found herself at the center of an expanding investigation that grew more astonishing with each new finding. She stood now in a large conference room at the Galactic Council headquarters, surrounded by holographic displays showing artifacts recovered from 7 different planets. All dated to the same period, roughly 12 to 15,000 years ago, all showed the same technological signatures. All were undeniably of human origin. Commander Jack Nelson entered the room, followed by Susan Miller and Zoltek. They had just come from a closed council session where they presented their latest findings. "How did it go?" Elaine asked, noting Jack's tired expression. About as expected, he replied. Some council members are still in denial. Others are already discussing the political implications. The Mindari representatives seemed particularly upset at losing their status as the first spacefaring species. Susan moved to one of the displays, adjusting it to show a comparison of writing samples from different planets. The consistency is remarkable, she said. The same language appears on all sites with minor regional variations. We've now translated about 30% of it, enough to confirm these were definitely human colonies or research outposts. Zoltek's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought among his species. The Council has authorized a research expedition to Earth, he announced. If humans achieved interstellar travel 15 millennia ago, there should be evidence. On their home world as well, Dr. Kevin Harris from Earth's Historical Institute will lead the investigation. Elaine had met Kevin during a conference several years earlier. He was well respected in archaeological circles, known for his work on prehistoric human settlements. When do they begin? She asked. They already have, Zoltek replied. The team has been working for 3 weeks. I received their preliminary report this morning. He activated a new display showing images of an underwater excavation site. These ruins were discovered 50 years ago off the coast of what humans call Japan. They were believed to be natural formations with perhaps some minor human modifications from early settlers. Dr. Harris's team has now confirmed they are the remains of an advanced structure that matches the architectural style found on GC 3721. The images shifted to show close-up scans of stone blocks with faint markings that matched the symbols they had been studying. Jack leaned closer to the display. So the evidence was there all along, just misinterpreted. Or deliberately ignored, Susan suggested. Think about it. If you found evidence that contradicted everything you believed about your own history, would you accept it easily? Or would you find a way to explain it away? 3 months later, Elaine found herself standing on a beach on Earth, watching waves crash against the shore. In the distance, research vessels hovered over the underwater excavation site, their lights visible even in the daytime. Kevin Harris approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He was a stocky man with a weathered face that spoke of years working outdoors. Thought you could use this, he said, handing her one of the cups. How does it feel to be back on Earth? Elaine took a sip before answering. Strange. I've spent so much time studying human artifacts on distant worlds, it's odd to be standing on the planet where it all began. Kevin nodded in understanding. We found 17 sites now, spread across every continent, all with the same technology, the same writing system, and all carefully buried or hidden, as if someone wanted them to be forgotten. They walked along the beach toward a temporary research facility set up near the excavation site. Inside, dozens of researchers from both Earth and other Council worlds worked together, analyzing artifacts and comparing notes. Susan was there, deep in conversation with several linguists. She waved Elaine and Kevin over. We've had a breakthrough with the translations, she announced excitedly. We found what appears to be a historical record at the site in South America. It describes how humans achieved their first faster-than-light travel approximately 16,000 years ago. They established colonies on more than 30 worlds over the next 3,000 years. And then something happened, Kevin added. About 12,000 years ago, according to our dating. Something catastrophic. He led them to another section of the facility where a large artifact was being carefully examined. It resembled a stone tablet but was made of a metallic material. That had survived millennia with minimal degradation. We found this last week in the underwater site. It's the most complete record we've discovered so far. The tablet was covered in the now familiar symbols, arranged in neat rows that filled both sides. We've only translated about half, Susan explained, but it appears to be a warning or a final message. It describes a threat that the ancient humans encountered during their exploration. Something they called the corruption. Elaine frowned. What kind of threat? It's not entirely clear from what we've translated, Susan admitted. The text uses metaphorical language that's difficult to interpret precisely. but it seems to describe some kind of infection or contamination that affected both their technology and themselves, something that spread through their colony network. Kevin pulled up a holographic display showing a map of the galaxy with the known ancient human outposts marked. "Notice the pattern," he said. "The colonies form a network extending outward from Earth, but then they stop abruptly at this point here." He indicated a boundary beyond which no human sites had been found. "As if they encountered something that halted their expansion, or something that forced them to retreat," Jack suggested, joining the conversation. He had arrived from GC3721 the previous day, bringing new artifacts discovered in the underground chamber. "The records we found suggest a deliberate shutdown of the colony network. Not a collapse due to war or natural disaster, but a planned withdrawal. Over the next several weeks, more evidence accumulated supporting this theory. Genetic analysis of ancient human remains found near the technological sites showed signs of advanced bioengineering. These humans had been modified, their DNA altered in ways that suggested they were adapted for space travel and different planetary environments. Most surprisingly, comparative analysis with modern human DNA revealed subtle markers that match these ancient modifications, suggesting that the current human population descended from these advanced ancestors. They didn't die out," Kevin explained during a briefing with Galactic Council representatives. "They deliberately regressed. The evidence suggests they dismantled their technology, erased most records of their achievements, and genetically modified their descendants to develop more slowly." "But why?" asked the Mendari representative, still struggling to accept that humans had preceded his species into space. "Why would an advanced civilization choose to become primitive?" Susan displayed the latest translation of the tablet found underwater. "According to this, they encountered something during their expansion that they couldn't defeat or contain. This corruption affected their technology first, then began altering those who used it. The only solution they found was to isolate Earth, remove all advanced technology, and restart human civilization from a pre-technological state." The implications stunned the council representatives into silence. Finally, Zoltek spoke. "If this interpretation is correct, these ancient humans sacrificed their advanced status to protect not only themselves, but potentially all other emerging civilizations in the galaxy. They chose to forget their own achievements rather than risk spreading this corruption further." On the beach that evening, Elaine watched the sunset over the ocean, contemplating everything they had learned. Jack joined her, his usual formal demeanor softened by the peaceful setting. "The Council has reached a decision," he said. "Humanity will be recognized as the first known space-faring species. The historical records will be amended." Elaine nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. "Somewhere out there," she said quietly, "beyond the boundary where the ancient colonies stopped, whatever they encountered might still exist. The corruption they feared enough to abandon everything they had built." Jack's expression grew serious. "The Council is already discussing that possibility. They're debating whether to send an expedition to investigate or to respect our ancestors' warning and avoid that region entirely." As darkness fell over the beach, the lights from the research vessels offshore seemed to mirror the stars appearing. In the sky above, humanity had once reached for those stars and then, for reasons they were only beginning to understand, deliberately turned away from them. Now, 12,000 years later, they had found their way back, only to discover that their journey into space had begun long before they remembered. 1 year had passed since the initial discovery on planet GC3721, and the galaxy had changed forever. The Galactic Council chambers were filled to capacity as representatives from every member species gathered for a historic announcement. Elaine sat in the front row next to Jack, Susan, and Kevin, watching as the council chairperson approached the central platform. The large chamber fell silent as the chairperson, an elderly member of the Mendari species, raised his four-fingered hands. "For attention. Today, we formally acknowledge what the evidence has proven beyond doubt," he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Humans were the first species in our known galaxy to achieve interstellar travel, predating the Mendari by approximately 12,000 years. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Though the findings had been circulating for months, the official recognition still sent ripples of surprise through the gathered representatives. In light of this revelation, the chairperson continued, Earth will now be recognized as a founding world with all associated privileges and responsibilities. The human delegation will be granted a permanent position on the senior council effective immediately. Elaine glanced at Jack, who nodded slightly in satisfaction. This was the political outcome they had anticipated, though neither of them had been involved in the negotiations. Their focus remained on the scientific implications of their discoveries. After the ceremony, they returned to the research center that had been established in what was once a minor council building. It had grown into a sprawling complex dedicated to studying the ancient human civilization. Susan met them at the entrance, her face alight with excitement. "We found it," she said without preamble. "The coordinates from the vault message." They were accurate. The vault had been discovered 3 months earlier, hidden beneath the main outpost on GC 3721. Inside, they had found a message left by the ancient humans, explaining their decision to abandon their technology and start again. The message had ended with coordinates to a hidden repository where the ancients claimed to have stored their most important knowledge. Kevin joined them as they hurried to the research center's main laboratory. "The survey ship reached the coordinates yesterday," he explained, pulling up a holographic display showing a small planetoid orbiting a red dwarf star. "It's exactly where the message said it would be. A small planetoid with no atmosphere, tidally locked to its star. The dark side is covered with ice, hiding the entrance to an underground facility." The display changed to show scanner readings of the planetoid's interior, revealing a vast complex buried beneath the surface. "Initial scans show the facility is intact and still maintains some form of power generation," Kevin continued. "And, there's this." He zoomed in on one section of the complex where a large chamber contained row upon row of cylindrical objects. "Storage units," Susan said. "Thousands of them." "What do they contain?" Elaine asked. "We don't know yet," Kevin admitted. "The survey team is proceeding carefully. If this facility has remained operational for 12,000 years, we need to understand its systems before interfering with them." Jack studied the display with a concerned expression. "Have they found any sign of this corruption the ancient humans mentioned?" Kevin shook his head. "Nothing obvious. The facility appears clean and well preserved. Whatever the ancients feared, they didn't expect to find it here." 3 weeks later, Elaine stood inside the ancient repository, marveling at the technology that surrounded her. The facility was vast, extending for kilometers beneath the planetoid's surface. Most remarkable was the fact that it was still functioning. After thousands of years, its systems humming quietly in the background. "Their engineering was incredible," Jack observed as they walked through a long corridor lined with doors. "This place was designed to last indefinitely." Susan approached from a side chamber, holding a small device. "We've managed to activate one of their data terminals," she reported. "The language interface matches what we've already translated, so we can navigate their systems now." She led them to a room where several researchers huddled around a console emitting a soft blue light. "Show them," she instructed one of the technicians. The technician nodded and touched a series of symbols on the console. A holographic display appeared above it, showing what appeared to be a medical diagram of a human body. But this body was different, with subtle modifications that enhanced its capabilities. "They were improving themselves," Susan explained. "Not just adapting to different environments, but evolving beyond baseline human capabilities. Enhanced intelligence, extended lifespan, resistance to radiation and disease." "Is this what they feared?" Elaine asked. "That they were changing too much?" Susan shook her head. "Not according to the records we found. The genetic modifications were controlled and intentional. The corruption was something else entirely." She touched another control, and the display changed to show something that resembled a network diagram. They called it the techno-organic virus. It first appeared in their most advanced AI systems, then spread to their network technology. Eventually, it began affecting the humans who used that technology, altering their minds and bodies in unpredictable ways. Jack leaned closer to the display. They couldn't contain it. They tried, Susan said grimly. For nearly a century, they fought against it, quarantining affected systems and individuals. But it kept evolving, finding new ways to spread. Finally, they realized they had only one option: complete technological regression. They had to abandon everything they had built and start again from the beginning. The implications were sobering. An advanced civilization had chosen to erase itself rather than continue fighting a losing battle against a threat they couldn't control. But they hadn't simply given up. They had preserved their knowledge here, in this hidden repository, hoping that one day their descendants would return to the stars wiser and better prepared. Over the next few months, research teams carefully explored the repository, documenting its contents and studying the ancient records. They found detailed histories of the rise and fall of humanity's first interstellar civilization. They discovered technological schematics far beyond current understanding. And most importantly, they found extensive information about the corruption that had forced their ancestors to retreat from the stars. They believed it came from somewhere beyond our galaxy, Kevin explained during a briefing with council representatives. Something they encountered during their early exploration. They never understood exactly what it was or how it worked. Only that it could hijack both technology and biology to serve its own purposes. And they believed this threat might still exist? Asked the chairperson. Kevin nodded gravely. The final entries in their records indicate they established a quarantine zone beyond which no ships were to travel. That zone roughly corresponds to the boundary where their colony network ended. The council chamber fell silent as everyone contemplated this warning from the distant past. Finally, Zoltek spoke. Our ancestors faced this threat and chose to protect future generations by sacrificing their own advancement. We should honor their wisdom by proceeding with caution. In the end, the council established a research initiative to study the ancient knowledge while maintaining the quarantine zone boundary. Ships would not venture beyond that line until they better understood what might be waiting there. On a clear evening 6 months later, Elaine stood on a hillside on planet GC3721, watching as the sun set over the excavation site where their journey had begun. Jack, Susan, and Kevin stood beside her, silently sharing the moment. In the distance, ships from Earth landed, bringing more researchers eager to learn about their unexpected ancestors. What do you think they would feel? Susan asked quietly. If they could see us now, their descendants, back among the stars. I think they would be proud, Elaine replied. They made an incredible sacrifice to protect us, but they also left us this gift. All their knowledge, their history, their achievements. They wanted us to continue their journey one day. And to avoid their mistakes, Jack added, they left us warnings as well as gifts. Kevin nodded in agreement. The real question is what we do next. Do we follow in their footsteps, pushing outward into the unknown? Or do we heed their warnings and proceed more cautiously than they did? They had no answer yet, but as darkness fell and the stars appeared above them, Elaine felt a connection to those ancient explorers who had stood on this same planet thousands of years ago. Humanity had been given a second chance at the stars, along with the wisdom of those who had gone before. What they did with that chance would shape the future of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. The discovery had changed everything, revealing that humanity's journey among the stars was not beginning, but continuing. The ancient humans had left their descendants a legacy of both wonder and warning. Now it was up to the current generation to write the next chapter of that journey, hopefully with more wisdom than their ancestors had shown. As the first stars became visible in the darkening sky, Elaine made a silent promise to those long-gone pioneers. Their sacrifice would not be forgotten, and their legacy would be honored by those who followed in their footsteps. The massive shadow fell across Earth without warning. Commander Jack Miller floated near the viewport of the International Space Station, his coffee mug drifting forgotten beside him. The alien ship that had appeared suddenly was larger than anything humans had ever built. It stretched nearly 5 kilometers from end to end, its dark metal surface covered with what looked like spines and ridges. "Are you seeing this?" Jack called over his shoulder, not taking his eyes off the vessel. Doctor. Lisa Howard pushed herself across the module to join him. Her face paled as she took in the sight. "I'm seeing it, but I don't believe it." They watched in silence as smaller craft began to deploy from the massive ship. Each one was sleek and predatory in design, reminding Jack of sharks cutting through water. "We need to contact Houston," he said, finally snapping out of his trance. But before they could reach the communication station, every screen on the space station flickered to life. The face that appeared made both astronauts freeze in place. The creature had dark, leathery skin stretched over a skull that seemed too angular to be natural. Its eyes were large, vertical slits of amber that seemed to glow with their own light. Most striking were the rows of sharp teeth visible when it opened its mouth to speak. "People of Earth," the creature said, its voice surprisingly clear despite the unusual shape of its mouth. "I am Supreme Hunter Vexenar of the Krozeth Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. Surrender immediately, and some of you may be permitted to live as servants." Within hours, the message had been broadcast worldwide. Government leaders scrambled to respond, while military forces went on high alert. Scientists worked frantically to analyze the limited data they had on the alien visitors. At a hastily assembled meeting at the Pentagon, Dr. Lisa Howard presented her findings via video link from the space station. "They call themselves the Krozeth," she explained to the room full of grim-faced officials. "Based on what we've been able to gather from their broadcasts and scans of their ships, they evolved from pack-hunting predators. They stand approximately 3 meters tall with reinforced exoskeletons and dual cardiovascular systems. Their claws can extend up to 20 centimeters and appear capable of tearing through metal." General Frank Peterson leaned forward. "What about weapons, vulnerabilities?" Lisa hesitated. "Their technology is far beyond ours. Energy shields, directed plasma weapons, faster than light travel. As for vulnerabilities," she shook her head. "They've conquered 17 other systems before reaching Earth. No one has successfully fought them off." "There must be something," said Secretary of Defense Ellen Wright. "What else do we know about them?" "They're predators in the truest sense," Lisa continued. "They hunt for sport as well as food, and they ... She paused, uncomfortable with what she had to say next. "They consider humans to be a prey species unworthy of respect. Their scans of human biology show no natural weapons, relatively thin skin, limited strength, and fragile bones. They're honestly confused about how we became the dominant species on our planet." The room fell silent as this information sank in. "So they think we're weak," General Peterson finally said. "That might be the only advantage we have." 3 days after first contact, the Krozeth launched their first attack. They targeted a small coastal town in Oregon named Seaside. The strike was surgical and overwhelming. Alien craft descended from the sky, deploying ground forces that moved with frightening speed and coordination. Local police and emergency responders were the first to encounter the Krozeth warriors up close. Body camera footage showed officers firing their weapons, the bullets either bouncing off exoskeletons or being stopped by personal energy shields. The aliens moved with incredible speed despite their size, covering ground in great leaping bounds and scaling buildings with their claws. The attack lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the Krozeth had established a forward base and taken dozens of humans captive for what they called biological assessment. Similar attacks followed across the globe. Major cities fell within days as conventional military forces proved ineffective against the invaders' superior technology and physical abilities, but something unexpected began to happen. While many fled the alien advance, others stayed to watch, to learn, and to plan. Among them was a park ranger named Alan Cooper. Alan had served 2 tours as a Marine before finding peace in the forests of the Pacific Northwest. When the Crozoth attacked a town near his ranger station, he didn't run. Instead, he observed from the woods, taking careful notes on their movements, their weapons, and their behavior. He noticed patterns. The aliens moved in coordinated packs, always keeping visual contact with each other. They relied heavily on what appeared to be thermal vision, easily spotting warm-blooded targets even through walls. Their hearing was exceptional, allowing them to detect the smallest sounds from great distances, but Alan also noticed weaknesses. The heavy exoskeletons that made them so formidable also limited their flexibility. They moved quickly in straight lines but struggled with rapid changes in direction. And despite their technological advantages, they behaved like predators who had never faced serious resistance. Overconfident and sometimes careless, when a small group of Crozoth warriors ventured into his forest in pursuit of fleeing humans, Alan put his observations to the test. He led them on a chase through dense underbrush, across streams, and up rocky slopes. The aliens were fast, but their large frames became liabilities in the thick forest. Alan used his knowledge of the terrain to stay just ahead of them, leading them deeper into the wilderness. Miles from their base, exhausted and overheated in their heavy armor, the aliens finally found themselves in a natural box canyon. When they turned to leave, they discovered fallen trees blocking their path, trees that had been carefully weakened beforehand. As they worked to clear the obstruction, the first hunting trap triggered. A net of steel cables, salvaged from a ski lift and weighted with rocks, dropped from above. 2 of the 5 Crozoth were entangled immediately. The others roared in fury, slashing at the cables with their claws. But their rage made them careless. They didn't notice the thin tripwires until they triggered more traps, pits concealed with branches, swinging logs, and finally, the gas. Alan had once worked with wildlife researchers who used sedative gas to safely capture large predators. He had adapted their equipment for larger prey. The last Crozoth warrior standing fought against the effects of the gas, staggering and slashing at the air before finally collapsing, standing over the unconscious alien. Gas mask secure over his face, Alan felt no triumph, only grim determination. He had proven what he suspected. Humans might lack natural weapons and armor, but they had evolved as persistence hunters, using intelligence, endurance, and teamwork to outlast stronger prey. He keyed his radio. "This is Cooper. Tell Dr. Howard I've got some specimens for her to study. And let the General know we can fight these things. We just need to fight them our way." The news spread quickly through remaining human resistance networks. The aliens weren't invincible. They could be outsmarted. They could be trapped. They could be studied. As the Crozoth consolidated their hold on major population centers, they remained unaware of the quiet observation taking place from the shadows. Humans, the supposed prey species, were watching, learning, and adapting. And in hidden facilities around the world, people like Dr. Lisa Howard began the work of understanding their enemy. The hunt had only just begun. But this time, the predators wouldn't be the only ones doing the hunting.